welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like that river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. So I go to my brother, but he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. It's been a long, long time.
Whew. If you were able to see that video, the entire change, one of the constants that we can rely on, change. Thank you. Roy saying good afternoon, and Shamini recognizing the power, invigorating message of that change music. So well amplified during the civil rights movement, now being shared again. Thank you, Zerica. Yeah, powerful introduction. Today, Lead Live, we're going to discuss leading now, the impact of diverse mindsets working together. We had planned to have John Santos here, and we both apologize, he and I. He will be back on August, or he'll be with us on August the 12th. And we'll talk more about individuals who will be here in subsequent sessions. But today, the topic is leading now, the emphasis on now. Wow. And then, of course, the emphasis on the power of what happens, the impact of having diverse individuals come together, working in concert to make a difference. There's a wonderful quote, and I hope you can see it, by Justice Sonia Sotomayor that really illuminates it. She refers to the importance of culture, the importance of her own diversity, her experiences to her judgeship. Well, I say the same thing, and her statement really illuminates the importance of all of our cultures, all of our experiences to everything we do in life. We ought not need external validation. We ought to be giving it to ourselves. And yet organizations that we choose to work in support of really benefit from leveraging us, further validating us in terms of our strengths, that come from our cultural lived experiences, and much more. So today I want to walk through a series of steps and then ask you to certainly share your questions, your comments, because this is a robust discussion among us. Those of us who are present, and for those of you who will see this video later, please reflect on it. Go deep, ask yourself questions about it. Findings from research, whether the research is done within the United States or elsewhere, especially from research institutions, Forbes magazine, foundations, corporations who enlist research institutions to engage in research, but technical institutes. They have found basically the same complementary outcomes from diverse work environments in the classic corporate settings and also in nonprofit settings. And what are some of those benefits? Promote inclusivity, doubling revenue, achieving mission-driven results faster, at a faster rate, making better business decisions. There's so much more. In fact, when I really recalibrated this session today, I read a number of research from Gallup polls, from a number of sources, really about the power and impact of diverse environments. And when I say diversity, what I mean, I want to be explicit. I want us to really think about all the different Asian groups, not just Chinese, Japanese. We can talk about the Hmongs. We can go on and on. I want us to think about the different Pacific Islanders. I want us to think about the diversity within the Black community. Yes, Black community. I want us to think about the different groups within the Latin community, Native American, the various nations. I want us to think about the different cultural groups, ethnic groups within what we call white community. I want us to think about those who were foreign born as we think about those who were native to these United States. I want us to think about folks across the planet. I want us to think about different age groups, genders. I want us to think about those who were physically disabled, whether it's because they committed to being part of a major organization, whether it's the military, whether it's a corporation, and they lost a leg, an arm, etc. Or they were born with a physical or other disability. And yet all of these groups, including the physically disabled, have assets. And that's what this discussion is about all of us and the assets that we provide. And we know from research, and again, I could spend at least an hour just talking about the research that demonstrates that when you add women to the equation, wow, things change. When you add Blacks, Latinos, Asians, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, whites, diverse folks to the equation, different age groups, the youngers, the more experienced elders to the group, you get better outcomes. That's what this is about today. So you know what I mean by diversity. I mean all diversity. Of course, religious diversity, language diversity. What's meant by mindset, though? So the title is Impact of Diverse Mindsets Working Together. What do I mean by that? So the classic textbook is mindset is mental outlook or mental state. Attitude, that's a very important word. Don't lose that. I'll come back to that if we have time. Thinking, frame of mind, state of mind, habits of mind formed by previous experiences, or habit of mind intentionally created in order to experience certain outcomes. I want you to remember that, because so much of what we experience comes back to mindset. Yes, things happen that we're not responsible for, yet how we respond to those things are powerful. That's our contribution. And you notice I said respond. I didn't say react. We can react to things all around us. Thank you, Tomoka, for joining us. Your attitude is important. What we have the power to do is to choose, and I've mentioned this before in previous broadcasts, and make sound decisions. That means that we listen for understanding. We don't listen to hear ourselves. We listen to the other to understand. And we go deeper than the words. We look for the intent. And then we leverage that to go deeper. We do the same thing with ourselves out of respect. And quite frankly, a little diversion. I think that the degree to which we understand who we are, and ideally as a principled person, honoring this temple within which we reside, and being clear about our values, our belief systems, being clear about our aims, all of a sudden we can understand why we're interacting with the world in the way that we are. Short of knowing those things about ourselves, to a great degree, we're driven by the external world. So I want you to remember that a key aspect of leadership is understanding self and then going out to understand the other. Short of understanding self, to some degree, not perfectly, I'm not talking about perfectly, but to some degree, we're better equipped to understand or be ready to understand the other. Come back to that too. So let's go further into mindset. You saw the statement of Justice Sotomayor, who is a remarkable woman. I'm so proud of her for her choosing to do what she was told she shouldn't be able to do because of her ethnicity, because of her culture, because of her gender. And she, like many of us, recognize that's other people's stuff. So when you hear people say you can't do something, recognize they're really initially talking about themselves, even if they care about you deeply. And your question to ask self is that information they're giving you helpful to the self? And if it is, use it. If it's not, put it on the shelf because it may be useful later. If it's destructive and harmful, toss it, move away. Honor, but move away. Just putting little tidbits in the meantime. So let's go back to mindset. So I said it's a frame of mind. It's really a habit of the mind based upon what we've done historically, whether historically is in the last year, or in the last 10 years, or the last 20 years, you get the point. And there's mindset that is fixed, there's mindset that is growth oriented. And you can probably imagine what I recommend, the growth oriented mindset. So what does that mean? That means that you are continuously learning. You're opting to understand in order to move your own efforts forward, whatever those efforts happen to be, whether it's as simple as purchasing a home and you've never done that before, or it's as simple to some, but extraordinary to others, as building a business, a multi-billion-dollar business. Whatever it is, it requires a particular mindset, clarity of what it is to begin with, and then a systematic approach to get there. We'll talk about that in a second. The mindset growth mindset is all about cultivating, developing, raising self, learning, flourishing. The whole notion of increase is about the growth mindset. The fix is just the inverse. And we know from looking at all kinds of art, like sports, the creation of the art that's in this space, for example, that comes out of creativity, that comes out of a growth engagement, okay? The inverse of just having blank walls that you've painted, that is fixed. You leave it the way it is. You have a blank canvas. Well, the same thing happens with regards to business, whether it is an educational institution or a profit-oriented institution like a corporation or a small business. Fixed mindset keeps the organization where it is and almost assures it an early death. A growth mindset ensures movement. Why do I mention that? I mention that purposely because what does diversity bring? Beyond the different ethnic groups, age, gender, physical abilities, what does that bring? Well, listen to this. Identifies problems early. Someone's going to be like my brother Paul, who's online. Says, it's true. It's really true. It's really, really, really true. Then act accordingly. Someone is going to have a counter view to everyone else. And in a group where there are ground rules, where respect is just understood, and you listen for understanding first rather than to be understood, then you go deep with that person, all of a sudden you listen to that person who has a different point of view about the trajectory or the path that the organization says it wants to go, or the team says it wants to go. Listen to that, because in that objection may be some kernel of truth, or may be a message to ensure that that group doesn't go off the cliff, because the cliff is not transparent. And yet this particular person is using his or her intuitive faculties and apprising the group and helping the group. I'm going to go through this list pretty quickly. The second one is raises value-added questions. Why? When? In what way? Encourages new thinking. I love organizational learning research. You bring people to the organization who are not already wedded to the existing culture, and they don't know what they don't know. They just begin to share because they believe they're valued, until, of course, they're not. So let's focus on them being valued and ensuring that the organization creates a space for the newcomers to do just that, share their value. Open minds. Diversity engenders open minds, accelerates the organizational change that's desired. Why? Because it promotes learning, reflection, creativity, originality, prompts modification of policies and administrative practices or operational practices, leverages divergent views and robust creativity to stimulate inventiveness, innovation, strategies among employees, promotes organizational congruence and coherence in a way that you can't even imagine initially. And let me tell you that forming a new group, a lot of us know the real challenge of that. Those of you who are watching, some of you are CEOs, you're vice president. Shamini says, great point on leadership, static versus dynamic mindset growth. The degree to which you build out a group, yeah, initially there's storming, there's forming, there's all this challenges like, why did I do this? Why did I bring this to people? And then all of a sudden, because you've got a set of values that are agreed to, that everyone's operating by, and before you know it, there's this, they're in the zone, they're flowing. And you're like, oh my God, this is the magic. And some organizations are astute enough to understand that that's what you want. And that's what you want to preserve. And you don't just get it and then it's permanent. You have to work to sustain it. We'll talk about leadership responsibility in a second. Also builds and foster healthier relationships, morale, and commitment. When you're honest and engaging authentically, you cut through the nonsense, you cut through the crap. Let's be clear. There's a lot of stuff that we bring to organizations as individuals. We don't just transform when we get online on Zoom or when we walk through a door. We are everything that we are at home and in the community. And so when we're sick, we bring that sickness with us, and hopefully we don't. When we're excited, got attitude of let's share gifts, we bring that with us. Leadership is so critical to reminding people of that and honoring people when they do it, so reinforcing that. Promotes mutual understanding of values, aspirations, and cultures. We don't know what we don't know. I don't know what I don't know. The power is in being open to possibilities. And there's so many examples right now, especially because of the horrific killing of Mr. George Floyd, but then many others. Women, Black, too many. Latinos, too many. Whites, too many. There are so many stories throughout this world of individuals being harmed. Yet when we bring these diverse folks together who are otherwise at odds, at loggerheads, guess what happens? And we agree to a certain basic set of principles. We begin to hear things that we didn't know before. We begin to open up a little bit more. Before we know it, no one's imposed. We've chosen to be open to the possibilities. That's what happens in transformational organizations. That's why they are succeeding at a greater rate, faster rate, and are more promising than many other organizations. Improve productivity, prompts personal growth and insights. Let's take a breather for a moment. So mindset, from my humble perspective, is everything. Everything. Not part of it, not 25%. Mindset is everything. What we hold in our mind. And our mind, we know from science, is not just in our brain. Our mind is in every cell of our body. And scientists have actually found the vibratory patterns of the mind extending beyond the body. So we don't really know yet enough about the mind, yet we do know it's powerful. And we do know there's a conscious intellectual mind and there's a subconscious feeling emotional mind. And we also know that 95 to 99% of what we do every single day is driven primarily by the emotional mind. Did you know that? So when someone says, oh, get over it, don't be emotional, they've missed the point. They just don't know. We are by nature emotional. And yes, we can be out of control. We can be extremely in control. The key thing is not about the control. The key thing is about the understanding of where we're going in relationship to where we're at. And hopefully it's a healthy space. And as we move to get there, we're honoring the temples that we're in. And we're honoring all the other temples. So we're honoring Asians. We're honoring Black. We're honoring Latinos. We're honoring Native American. We're honoring whites. We're honoring Pacific Islanders. We're honoring different ages. We're honoring sexes. I can go on and on. I'm emphasizing this to make a point, because so much of what has been codified in systems and in behaviors, even policies, historically, we can trace back to the need to undermine a group. I don't care what group it is. The darker the group, the more the undermining. But undermining a group because we needed to feel like we had more power, we had more leverage. Reminder, the degree to which the least among us is housed and has housing security, then all of us are housed and have housing security. The degree to which the least among us has food security, all of us have food security. The degree to which the least among us can navigate this terrain called life and add value, all of us are adding even more value. So we need the so-called least among us to be as comfortable and honored and supported so that we can be more successful, not only in business, which is critical to functioning in terms of our world economic system. It's not just a local US, it's the world. But also for our intimate families. We don't know what we don't know. I say that often. And so I'm constantly learning. These books are just a very small segment of my library. Some of it's online, increasingly so, but I love the texture of the book. There's so much that so many of us are sharing, and there's much more for us to share. And when we triangulate it, it's almost like I'm reading the same person in 10 other books, because the essence of truth is truth, independent of who we are. And yet the diversity of messaging helps us get to a better and a more efficient place. So types of mindset. I'm going to stay with mindset for a moment. And I want to reference earlier than I had planned, Jeff. So if you can put up Nelson Mandela's statement. I think this is powerful because it speaks to the power of the most effective leadership that I think that we've experienced on the planet. When it occurs, the leader is not thinking about him or her as a particular leader in a role. They're thinking about a vision. They're experiencing the vision. They actually see the vision. Okay? Doesn't matter who that person is. We can think of countless people, current day, previous day, and even see them in the future in terms of our children. So Nelson Mandela said what? I never lose. I either win or I learn. Remember that. That's the power of what diverse leadership does. Understand it's not about losing. It's about learning and growing and collectively adding value so the wins are greater. But even when there's a so-called failure or so-called loss, when you understand it's part of the learning process, then you do what Nelson Mandela does. When he was behind bars being beaten, he didn't say, well, me, I give up. He could have. Many of us do that. He said, okay, how do I rethink this and go deeper, because I've already envisioned what the result's going to be. And he lived the results that he envisioned that started with that vision. So the types of mindsets are everything's possible, big dreams, which I default to. Another is, from the Buddhist perspective, is passion first. We can go into details if you want to. That's about authentic talents, deepest interests. The next one is we are connected, which I fundamentally believe. And what makes you unique and remarkable adds value to my essence. And that's why I love working with diverse groups. And it's intentional. It's not by accident, it's by design. And we'll talk about inclusive leadership by design in a moment. So 100% accountable is number 4. Choose to be responsible for one's own success, one's own happiness, one's own internal health. Yes, we've got to work to transform systems however we need to, and transform real policies that affect countless lives. In the meantime, we've got to do the hard, heavy lifting internally. 5th one is attitude of gratitude. Seek positives from every experience. Be grateful, even for the challenges, even for the most difficult challenges. It's a whole story there. 6, live to give, inspire and serve others while maximizing your potential. The time is now. Harness the power of now. And so I said, leadership, leading now, is about recognizing the power that we have now to be the change we envision. That's why we started with Change, that powerful song. It's not about change tomorrow. It's about change now. We don't have yesterday, nor do we have tomorrow. And quite frankly, in my space, all those things coexist with now. The past, the future coexist now. We get to change everything. We create a ripple effect in our own small yet significant ways. Exceptional teams that work together, the mindset of them are the following, at least. They do better together. They believe that. They are investments rather than cost. Everyone is unique and distinct, and they honor that. They don't try to melting pot. No, it's about that personal uniqueness. They leverage the business and simplify the work. We make things too cumbersome, too frequently. Leverage that diversity to simplify, make things elegant. I'll never forget when I interviewed my brother, Paul. He says that, he tries to work 20 hours a week, but he overperforms. They were supposed to bring in 3 million in one category. They brought in 6 million. So why do 40 hours when you can do better, perform better in 20 hours? The same principle. And he has a diverse team by design. I could share more about that. Growth is a result of increased capacities of the entire team. And focus on strengths of individuals. And I used to do it and still do it in terms of neutralizing the weaknesses. So if someone has a key weakness, look in the organization and ask who has that strength, bring them to the party. Have them part of that work group. And then that individual who has a weakness in that area needs to develop, invest in that, in developing that. So I said earlier, and I hope I'm not moving so fast where I'm not actually acknowledging comments. I'm going to ask a question of Tomoko, answer her question first before I go on to sound leadership. What would you say to people who call themselves realistic while others may perceive it as a fixed mindset? What is the difference? Wow, important question, key question. So realistic, and other people call that fixed. Well, how do they define realistic? That's the key thing. And so people are going to define realistic in different ways. Well, all the other organizations do it this way. So they're benchmarking. Everyone's has always done this, so we're going to do it this way. That's realistic. To do it any other way is unrealistic. Let's be clear. We're going to undermine the organization. Well, challenge that. Again, using your values of respect, appreciation for that perspective. Ask the questions. Go deep. What do you mean by realistic? To understand if they're benchmarking, or to understand if they've looked at research. You want to understand what that realistic means. Historically, that's what we've done as a culture. We've always done it that way. Well, maybe that's the reason why the organization has not shifted, created the kinds of, whether it's revenue, whether it's student outcomes, whether it is addressing community needs in the way that it desires, because it's been so-called realistic. And the question is how to help that individual leader, whether it's a director, it's a provost, or it's a president or a vice president or a CEO, a chief financial officer. Ask the question, how can we move the needle if we use the same set of tools, the same set of practices, the same policies? How do we change the nature of how people treat people on this planet if we do the same thing we've been doing the last 50 years? We don't change. So the question is, what do you have to offer to help them understand the power of a growth mindset? Well, is there a set of research out there that suggests how this organization may transform? Or is there an idea that's not born out of research that you recommend the organization test? There should be room for risk-taking. And of course, it's measured, it's strategic. You can have all kinds of qualifiers, but it's risk nonetheless, meaning you don't know the outcome. It's not certain. And the powerful thing about that quote from Nelson Mandela was really to remind us that it's not about certainty. We search for certainty. That's why we are closed a great deal. We want to control because we want to predict. In reality, we could not predict COVID, the coronavirus 2019, short COVID-19 pandemic. We can't predict a lot. So change is a constant. What's also is a constant is the ability to choose. Another constant is diversity. We may try to close ourselves off from it. It's real though. It will manifest itself in different ways. So the degree to which we choose to lead in a way where we embrace it, we're leveraging it. We're leveraging it in a way that serves the greatest good. And if you understand, as I understand, that there's sufficient resources for everyone, listen to that. There's sufficient resources, not just for a few of us, 5%, 1%, 10%, 20%. There's enough for everyone. The question is, are we committed to ensure that we have no one who's homeless? Are we committed to ensuring that individuals who end up in high school are prepared to go on to college or go on into a career if they want to immediately? Are we committed to determining how to transform systems so that people are so well represented in all of our profit and nonprofit businesses that we're thriving in ways that we can't even imagine? Well, we could imagine with a collective diversity. So Paul makes the statement, a realistic, quote unquote, quote, realistic, unquote, view isn't realistic if it doesn't take into account new relevant variables. It hasn't been realistic last year, maybe not this year. Thank you for that contribution. Before I go on to talk about and very briefly list what I perceive to be salient aspects of leadership, inclusive leadership by design, are there other questions or even recommendations? Okay, So I'm going to make and thank you, Shamini, indicating the great point on leadership, static versus dynamic mindset, growth mindset. I want to emphasize that again. I want to put out 4 words. I want you to think about them, reflect on them. Awareness, attitude. Remember I mentioned attitude earlier? Knowledge and paradigm. Awareness of our state of consciousness. So critical. Oftentimes we're looking at the news, we're watching a movie, we're listening to our children, we're thinking about all the Zoom meetings we're having to go into. We're not even aware of our state of consciousness. We're all over the place. And I say we because all of us does that at different points in time. Some of us less than others. Awareness, attitude. I call it the magic word because it affects how we interact with self and the world around us. And it's a powerful word. I show up angry, I'm going to think everyone's angry. It had nothing to do with anyone else but me. It's my own stuff. I show up happy, I think everybody's happy. It had nothing to do with anybody else. It's my own. So when I understand that my attitude really shapes a great deal of what I experience, no, it's not negating the fact that things outside of us affect us, yet we choose our attitude. And I want to remind us of that. Knowledge, and spoken to knowledge, the importance of understanding factual information, not just, a bunch of stuff that's on the internet and someone says, including me, go look for evidence. I've shared a lot. Look for the evidence behind what I shared. Ask me for the evidence. Ask each other. And do more than that. Have those things inform your beliefs and your values, not where they dictate them, where they allow you to expand and grow. And inform your difficult conversations or difficult experiences, whatever they happen to be, as you look to move policies, practices. And then the paradigm. What is paradigm? Simplistic way one of my mentors conveyed, and that is, it's a multitude of habits. And it doesn't matter what book I've read that are seminal books, Science of Getting Rich, that was back in the early 1900s, or more recent, the 10 Habits of, I can name a few books. They all talk about our ability to form habits, and those habits are the reason for our results. We think, we feel, we behave, we get a result. Paradigm. Our paradigm in which we operate is a reflection of our habits, our belief systems, our values. So the question that Paul asked, another question, is, what is the pre-meeting event routine? Meditation, relaxing, and exercise, etc. What is mine? What is mine? I ask myself a question. What do I need? And I stop, because sometimes it's confusing to myself because I'm thinking about so much stuff. What do I need? And always, or usually rather, I go back to just silence. I don't need anything. I have everything I need. I literally have everything I need. I'm extremely fortunate. And yet I'm not fortunate to the degree where I can say I'm fully fortunate. I am fully fortunate when everyone's in the same space, where they have what they need. So I go into that meditation space of just nothingness. I don't seek to see something to engage in any particular prayer or chant. I just seek to be quiet and silence. And as a leader, when you're able to go in and ground yourself in whatever way that works for you, it is in fact transformative. So whether you're in a household where there's 20 people and you have what you may consider private space, look for a corner and identify that corner as your safe space. And even if you're sitting among all the voices and activities, center on that corner. Look for a spot that you create with your imagination, and then just go silent. honor you. That's powerful. Because as leaders, and I'm working with a number of them who are dealing with a lot of, you could even say unreasonable challenges. They're running organizations. Whether you're a parent having to take care of your child 24/7, where otherwise you'd have support for that, or you are running an organization with so many players with so many needs, I encourage you to do this. And this is the same thing that I encourage you to do with your teams as you build inclusive and diverse teams. Emphasis on you being intentional about it. Be visible in your commitment. Whatever it is, make it transparent. Respect the engagement of anyone and everyone you're working with, you're supporting. Value the strengths of everyone. Be with humility, humble. You don't know what you don't know. None of us does. Yet what you do know allows you to influence in a powerful way. Honor that power that you have and be humble about it. Do what is right even when no one's looking. So that when you're in front of, you're washing your face, you're brushing your teeth in that mirror, even if it's clouded, you're looking at it, you see integrity. Be aware of your inherent bias. All of us has biases, whether we think they're great biases or not. Those biases predispose us to being closed. Even if they're great biases, we still are closed to possibilities. We want to be open. Curiosity about others is so invaluable. Listen without judgment. Listen to be clear about their intent to the degree possible. Honor that intent, even if you don't like the intent. Honor it, respect it, and see how you can help that individual or those individuals, even given that intent. It's more discussion about that. Cultural intelligence. I can't undermine the importance of the cultural intelligence. We don't know what we don't know. I am fortunate to have been able to go to other countries, whether it was China, whether it was in different parts of Europe, whether it was in South America. I don't know what I don't know. I've never been to the continent of Africa. I hope to be soon. I hope to be in other parts of the world. Yet, walking with our own colored lenses, I call them our values, our belief systems, our experiences, does not bode us well if we're trying to understand. When we understand those biases and are able to put them to the side for a moment and then be open to possibilities, all of a sudden we can begin to develop competence and understanding different cultures. So even as you're bringing in individuals, for example, to your organization, whoever you may be, and you don't understand what it means to work with Black folks, and you think they're all loud, you think they're whatever, and you find someone who's amazingly quiet, and you're out of sorts. Well, don't assume that that person is problematic. Assume that you don't know what you don't know. And the same thing with regards to someone who's speaking Spanish. I'll never forget experiencing individuals in the workplace who were upset with people speaking another language. And so I just went to them as the lead of that organization, president of a college, and said, help me understand why that disturbs you. And it wasn't really about the other person speaking the language. It was the other person's issues. It had nothing to do with the person speaking, whether it was Spanish, whether it was French, whether it was another one that was popular. Oh my goodness, it'll come to me in a second. Farsi in this particular group. So be ready to learn and unlearn what you've learned before, because some of what we know is not only not accurate, it is harmful. So be ready to unlearn. Effective collaboration, being visible and vocal, showing up in whatever way, vocal in a way that always transmits the visuals, the values, the vision of the organization, the values of the organization, the mission, the appreciation for what the inclusive, diverse group is providing. And the results: deliberately seek out difference and check your impact. What does that mean? Check your impact. Anyone want to address that in the comment section? That's powerful. Study the degree to which your own behavior is effective. So there's so many different ways to do it. So what I used to do at the end of an event is have people fill out a survey and make the survey as simple and elegant as possible, 1 or 2 or 3 questions. And then I read the feedback, or I'd ask more people to provide feedback, doing almost like a 360 evaluation of me, whether colleagues thought it was sensible or not. So I could see the feedback that was actually a little bit uncomfortable, that said, whatever it said, that made me recognize I had room to grow. And so that's part of checking the impact. Whether you're putting on a workshop, whether you're putting on a conference, whether you are putting on a Zoom meeting, ask for feedback at the end. And allow people to do it anonymously, whether you're using SurveyMonkey or some other tool that's efficient, or Google Survey, that allow them to provide anonymous feedback so that they're not always concerned about the degree to which you're going to get back to them. But demonstrate your value of the feedback by showing up and even sharing it in a way that's transparent, if that's safe. You always have to be safe. I just chose to share it because I think what it did was allow for folks to understand not only the nature of what was going on, the nature of my leadership. Transparency is powerful. Doesn't guarantee that people are going to believe you or follow you or even leverage you. It really does set the tone for your ability to be successful and working with diverse teams. So I'm going to take a moment and breathe, because we've gone quite a bit, and just check with those of you who are online if you have any questions or comments. I love the idea of silence. I'm going to share this, what I call do's and don'ts, and I use them all the time. Do establish trust with these groups. Listen, listen, listen. Recognize when something is wrong, pay attention. Seek first to understand. Seek common understanding. Empathize. Communicate clearly, often, and in transparent ways. Provide explicit and fair expectations. Accommodate, collaborate, and bargain when appropriate. Hire culturally competent and high quality, fill in the blank, executives, key professionals, support staff as professionals. Support and train, support and train, support and train. Plan for successful engagement. And I gotta say the don'ts. They're short, but they're very powerful. You don't want to assume. You don't want to avoid conflict. You don't want to support gossip. You don't want to focus on personalities. Say anything that you will regret later. Give in to abuse, verbal or otherwise. Seek to win at the expense of others. The behavior of anyone, whether you're leading a group, you're leading a unit, you're leading an organization, you're leading a family. You engage in those do's, benefits are amazing. Take a lot of time, but the benefits on the other hand are remarkable. Engage in those don'ts, expect the slow down the health, the well-being, the effectiveness of the organization. I always like to leave things on a positive note. I'm going to re-emphasize some things. Be open-minded, build and maintain trust and teamwork, be authentic and sincere, maintain a positive and optimistic outlook. Your attitude's critical. Share common mission, vision, and values. Be known, even within a family, not just in a formal organization. Be known to demonstrate the values of your household, of your business, of your practice. Know what is going on in your organization. Always focus on behaviors and events and not on personalities. People have a right to be who they are. Honor them. They don't have a right to behave any way that may be destructive or criminal. Know the difference between cultural and personal, and identify conflict early, address it head on in a very respectful way. I want to thank you, everyone, and thank you for your comment. Tomoko, check your impact is very important. A lot of people try to avoid gaining constructive feedback in the workplace because they're worried their performance would be affected. What can we do to help people understand constructive feedback is going to help? Now, let me be very clear. I know that there are individuals who are in leadership roles who arguably shouldn't be in those roles, and yet they are in those roles. And so in those cases, what you do is, if you're working under their supervision or their leadership, we call it, some people call it managing up. I call it leading up. Everyone in every role is a leader. You have a responsibility. You've got some goals to achieve. You have hopefully some resources to achieve them. You have a timeline. You're leading a particular area of that unit, that organization. And so when you have someone who's functioning in a way that is, and seem not to be open to constructive feedback, then find ways by asking questions of colleagues who seem to be effective in providing feedback, or seek feedback from an external source. Maybe you have a coach, maybe you have someone in a different organization that you can trust without giving them the details, because the details may be too confidential. Or maybe you seek out feedback. But one thing you do, you honor that individual who may have an issue, may have a low sense of self. Yes, it may be masked. He or she may be masking it as, I'm the leader, I know what to do, I don't need the feedback. We're going to do this and I don't want to hear anything. Well, then what you do is you may send them, but you never do it in a public space with these individuals who may be hurt or lose face if they're confronted. So in a very soft way, you may send a little email. Say, I heard this. Have you thought about this? I just wondered. I didn't want you to miss this information. It may be an email, or it may be as you're both picking up, well, when you are in the workplace, coffee, or in a Zoom meeting, asked to have a conversation offline where you actually speak one-on-one. And so, I was thinking about this, and I'm not certain that that necessarily will work, but have you thought about this? Could we consider this? So just be open. Don't assume that your feedback is most useful. And I know we're talking about constructive feedback, but when you're dealing with someone who may be ego-oriented and not open to constructive feedback, you then put the feedback in the form of a suggestion, a recommendation for a practice or something that the organization might benefit from. Does that help? Let me know. Well, I want to thank you all for being part of this. The intent is really to remind us of our capacity to make a difference, and to remind us that there are so many examples, increasingly so, that at the margins, not replete among all organizations, especially businesses, corporations, nonprofits, where people who are diverse in their cultural background, their languages, their contributions are invaluable. Women contributions are invaluable. Young people, older, more experienced in terms of professional years, invaluable. We benefit from slowing down and asking ourselves, how do we leverage the value of diverse folks who are not currently in our organization? And I'm taken back to the pain study that was completed by San Jose State University Human Rights Institute, where they found that 10 of Silicon Valley large firms have 0 Black women in it. I thought we were talking about executives. No, 0 Black women. Doesn't make sense, does it? There's other data that we find in many organizations where literally the bringing in women at the executive level or responsible for major projects made a sea change because it was just the thinking, the mindset. And that reminds us, as women, remain who we are. Don't try to become a man. As Black folks, Latinos, Asian, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, the rest of us, don't try to be white. We are who we are. Bring the culture to the workplace in a way that is additive. My apology. So thank you. I want to thank you all and just acknowledge a statement by Roy. Sometimes these issues come up when people of color work with each other. What advice would you give people of color leaders? So Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, on and on, working with other people of color. It's comparable advice. Let me be very clear. If we don't watch it, we try to replicate ourselves in organizations. And we do it effectively. I don't know how it just happened because we weren't being intentional in creating the diversity that we want to experience. It's really as simple. And of course, the work can be challenging, yet it's less challenging when we make the commitment. And Lynn Marie says, I'm watching while working at a food bank in Oakland. I play it for the staff to watch together. Oh, they have great discussions. And that staff that she's leading are diverse. And Tomoko is acknowledging Roy's question, a great question. And Sherlyn is saying precise and concise dynamic presentation. Oh, thank you. She feels better about herself and her work. Oh, and Sherlyn is doing remarkable work. She's taken up to 100 or so youth to different countries and to even the White House and to major forums to perform Chinese music and other music, classical music. And in the process of doing all that, expose these individuals, young people, many of them under the age, they're in college, at Laney College, and at a local middle and high school, expose these individuals to diversity and honor their own diversity. It's just powerful. Thank you, Marilyn, for being here. She says, leading up, exclamation mark. Nice way, a very nice way to think about it. Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to thank you all for joining us. We went longer than I anticipated, yet quite frankly, I think we can discuss this for an extended period of time. The key thing is moving it from discussion, from ideas, from research, from evidence, to replicating it across the globe in a way that honors all cultures, all genders, all age groups. We have a great deal of capacity and power. Let's leverage it. Thank you very much. And always, thank you behind the scenes, Raleigh, Roy, Jet, and the countless numbers of you who will be using this and other information to be the change that we collectively envision. Thank you.